In 2006, the Pittsburgh Penguins were broke, the arena was crumbling, and Mario Lemieux was ready to sell. Jim Balsillie, the billionaire behind BlackBerry, swooped in with a $175 million offer. He had eyes on possibly relocating the team to Hamilton, Ontario. The deal looked to be set, minus some I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed, but days before closing, Balsillie backed out. So what happened? What stopped him from purchasing the brightest young team in the league? Was it hubris? Did the NHL step in? Or were there other factors you may have never heard of? This is the story of how Jim Balsillie tried to buy and possibly relocate the Pittsburgh Penguins. In 2006, even though the Pens had a sophomore Crosby and a rookie Malkin, they were in deep trouble. They played in the Mellon Arena, commonly known as the Igloo. This was one of the oldest facilities in the league, and the Penguins' lease was in its final year. In 1999, Mario Lemieux converted his unpaid salary to equity in the Penguins in a bankruptcy court. He wasn't a conventional owner. He didn't have the financial backing to fund a new arena, so he had to put the team up for sale. Immediately, the vultures began to circle. One of the interested parties was Mark Cuban, but there was a name that stood out amongst the rest: Jim Balsillie, co-CEO of Research in Motion, the company that made the iconic BlackBerry phones. First, he almost signed a letter of intent to buy the team in July for $175 million. But according to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, he had second thoughts when he discovered he couldn't easily move the team to Hamilton. Reportedly, Lemieux said that any potential owner would be contractually bound to keep them in Pittsburgh. This was contingent upon a third party, Isle of Capri Casinos, getting a slot machine license from the state of Pennsylvania. Upon receiving this license, Isle of Capri promised to fund a $290 million arena for the Pens. Balsillie regrouped, thought about it, and in October, right before the puck dropped on a new season, a deal was struck for the Penguins: $175 million. All that was left was Balsillie getting approved by the Board of Governors and Isle of Capri getting their gaming license. But behind the scenes, Balsillie was making moves. His dream was to bring a 7th NHL franchise back to Canada, and he set his sights on Hamilton, or even the Kitchener-Waterloo area. This was where RIM was headquartered. He met with the city of Hamilton, owners of the Copps Coliseum, and inquired about its suitability for an NHL team. That being said, Hamilton faced a lot of hurdles. First, they were near two already existing markets, Toronto and Buffalo. Second, and more importantly, the NHL was fiercely loyal to existing markets. They will always do whatever it takes to keep franchises in their existing territory. Just look at how long the Coyotes were in Arizona. Also, the Copps Coliseum needed at least $100 million worth of upgrades. In public, Balsillie was saying all the right things, not raising any eyebrows. He said he expected the deal to go through, and he intended on keeping the team in Pittsburgh for a long time. But again, it came down to the arena. He said, "The city has to build a new arena. That's an imperative. If they don't, then it's a big problem, and Gary Bettman is really concerned if that doesn't happen. Our plan is to get a deal." Balsillie clarified his position, stating he'll abide by the contract requiring him to keep the team in Pittsburgh if Isle of Capri funded the new arena. The future of hockey in Pittsburgh hinged on this arena deal. Lemieux believed Balsillie. Mario said, "I think Jim is committed as long as we get a new arena and a fair deal. I think he's going to be a perfect owner for this market." Lemieux went through a lot with the Penguins. When asked if he felt bitter about selling the team, he said, "I've been disappointed a little bit, but I understand politics now. Everybody lies, and then you go along with it." Was Balsillie lying to him? Did he really want to keep the team in Pittsburgh? Or was he just saying that because he thought the league wanted to hear him say that? All the while hoping for Isle of Capri to go away so he can move the team to Canada. When asked about what he would do if the gaming license was rejected, Balsillie had no comment. There was another major issue. Isle of Capri wasn't guaranteed a gaming license. There were other corporations in on the bid. What would happen to Balsillie's bid on the Penguins if Isle of Capri was rejected? What would happen to the Penguins? Before we move on to part 2, if you're enjoying this video, please subscribe. I'm trying to hit 25,000 in 2025, and I can do it with your help. Thank you. A source familiar with the arena issue said, "It's very simple. You put an arena there, team stays. You don't, team moves." The countdown was on. Was Pennsylvania gonna grant Isle of Capri a gaming license? Meanwhile, in Kitchener, radio station 570 News bought the rights to air Penguins games. Balsillie was supportive of this, emailing the station and telling them to keep broadcasting the games. In Pittsburgh, fans were fuming. They highlighted how the financial woes were not because of a lack of fan support, it was because of poor ownership, over-leveraging themselves financially. They also pointed out that the Pens had the third highest TV ratings out of all American teams, behind only Detroit and Philly. Pens fans were willing to do whatever it took to keep Crosby and co. in Pittsburgh. Bettman began applying pressure on the state of Pennsylvania. He told them if they didn't approve the Isle of Capri proposal, the Penguins were going to have to leave Pittsburgh. Was he bluffing or was he serious? And if they were going to leave, would they really go to Hamilton or Kitchener? In December, Balsillie's deal was days away from being approved by the NHL's Board of Governors, with or without Isle of Capri's gaming license. The NHL did have a plan B in case things didn't go their way. Pennsylvania officials came up with a plan where the Penguins would pay $8 million up front and $4 million a year for 30 years to fund the new arena. The rest of the revenue was going to come from whoever won the gaming license. But on December 15th, Balsillie dropped a bombshell on the hockey world. He withdrew his bid from buying the Penguins. He was just days away from fulfilling his lifelong dream. The Board of Governors unanimously approved the deal. Why would he pass up on the chance to own a team with Crosby, Malkin, and Marc-Andre Fleury? Why didn't he wait for Pennsylvania's decision on the gaming license? Turns out, the NHL imposed several conditions on his purchase that would have made it impossible for him to move the team, even if Isle of Capri wasn't chosen. The NHL blindsided him with these conditions. They waited until 2 days before closing before presenting them to him. And finally, it became obvious that his true intention was to move the team. He was just waiting for Isle of Capri to get rejected. And when the league said you have to keep them in Pittsburgh regardless, he abandoned ship. Or, and this is the other theory, he didn't mind keeping the Penguins in Pittsburgh, but only if the arena deal made sense for him financially. He didn't want to be forced by the NHL to make an agreement with Pennsylvania just for the sake of keeping the team in Pittsburgh, especially if it tied up more of his assets. That plan B I mentioned, $4 million a year over 30 years, that would have cost him over $100 million. Of course, the NHL had their own version of events. Bill Daly came out and said, "Nothing in the letter," referring to the letter with the conditions on it, or the consent were inconsistent with the substance of numerous discussions and correspondence we had with the potential buyer throughout the process. Pretty much, Daly is pinning the blame on Balsillie, saying that he knew from day one he was required to keep the team in Pittsburgh. Well, Mr. Daly, then why did you wait until 2 days before closing to get it formally in writing? I don't really buy the NHL's version of events here. Back in Pittsburgh, Lemieux was furious. He was shocked, offended, and he refused to give Balsillie his deposit back. In public, Lemieux came out and said, "While these developments create significant uncertainty, the Penguins organization will reevaluate our situation after the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board makes the decision on awarding of the Pittsburgh gaming license. The best way to assure that the team remains viable and in Pittsburgh is to award the gaming license to the Isle of Capri." Drumroll please. And the gaming license is awarded to Don Barden and the PITG Gaming Majestic Star. A huge blow to the Penguins. The decision by the Gaming Commission was terrible news for the Penguins, their fans, and the NHL, said Gary Bettman. The future of this franchise in Pittsburgh is uncertain, and the Penguins will now have to explore all other options, including possible relocation. Could Balsillie possibly re-enter the picture and relocate the team to Southern Ontario? All it would take is a phone call or a BBM message, but not so fast. When relocation became more likely, the NHL didn't even look in Balsillie's direction. He burned too many bridges, and Lemieux, along with the NHL, started looking at American cities. Kansas, Vegas, Houston. They would much rather go to a new market, instead of having to compete in Ontario with the Senators and Leafs. Lemieux officially took the Penguins off the market right before Christmas, and Balsillie made one last-ditch effort to restart negotiations. He wrote a letter to Lemieux that was published in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. It said, "All papers have been signed, and everything is in place to close the deal. But it's imperative that we move quickly." However, Lemieux didn't even entertain this possibility. Balsillie was trying to crawl back into Lemieux's good books, saying he would consider Plan B, but it was too late. The trust was broken. Lemieux was able to use public outcry to pressure local and state governments, threatening to move the team without a new arena. Finally, the authorities caved, a new arena was built, and the rest, as they say, is history. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.